It's a new avenue, a new podcast, a new show, a new feel, and it's time, ladies and gentlemen, to feel the beat. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Corey Crisan. Over there is Chris Halicke. This is a new podcast coming to DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. It's also a live stream every Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern from about 3 until 3:30. Chris and I will be live right here to talk Steeler football on a day-to-day basis. Leading into the Ramon Foster show, this is the Southside Beat. Chris, let's do this, man.
What's going on, man? I'm stoked. I'm stoked. Been wanting to talk Steelers every day for I don't know. I talk Steelers every day, no matter what. But now we get to do it in this forum. Get to interact with each and every one of you, and this audience is only going to grow. I'm excited to talk, and so we're obviously going to be coming in with topics. That's obviously our job here to drive the conversation. But you guys can also drive the conversation too. Anybody who joins live, interact, ask questions, leave comments. Bricks Gaming. All right, what's this? Can't wait. Well, yeah, this is the Southside Beats, the brand new show. Man,
I'm tease.
Right. Yep. Ryan Stanley right before Hey Moan. Nice. Hey Moan. Wait, wrong show. Yeah, I am not Ramon Foster. I'm in the same square that he's in, but I am not Ramon Foster.
I'm clearly not DK, so we will be the people to precede the people that you also want to see. So you're essentially getting, when it comes down to it, an hour and a half to 2 hours of live Steelers content daily here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. So the way this is going to work, it's going to be broadcast live on our YouTube channel, on Twitter, on Facebook. It's going to be shown live, but it will be in podcast form where those are found later. So the Apple Podcast, the Google Play, the Spotify, it'll be available on all of those platforms as well. Yeah, you know, DK found the box of donuts that was hidden in the break room. I mean, let's be frank. Sometimes that happens. If it looks like, if you're listening to the podcast and we're breaking away from, some of the usual talk, it's because we're going to live comments. Chris and I want this to be your show as much as it is our show.
Absolutely.
It's going to be our show as a collective. And, when it comes to talking the Steelers, I'm obviously on the South Side every day. Chris is watching from afar, analytically, watching all the films. So I think what we have for you is a really nice little breakdown and a nice little dynamic when it comes to being in the building like I am versus kind of that 10,000-foot view that Chris is going to provide.
I think one thing that I can also provide too, and one thing that's going to be awesome about our Steelers coverage on DK Pittsburgh Sports is Corey's there every day. DK is obviously going to be there. I'm also going to be at some of the games as well. Corey's going to be at some of the games. DK is going to be at every single game. Like, we have so many different hands in the pile that we're just going to be bringing all kinds of Steelers coverage for each and every one of you. And all from like different voices. So you're not getting kind of the same canned repetition. We got a former NFL offensive lineman with Ramon Foster coming up in an hour, always giving his awesome perspective. And then Matt Williamson giving his stuff in the weekly war room on DK Pittsburgh Sports, which, by the way, all the content on there is free. So like when we refer to anything that's on there, go read it. It doesn't cost anything. Go read it. It's awesome. So I think we'd be remiss to not talk about the fact. Okay, well, I guess we have to address the flip-flops first.
I don't own flip-flops.
Okay, I actually don't either.
I don't own flip-flops.
I'm wearing Crocs right now, but I don't own flip-flops.
Go for it.
How is our over-under 8.5? Okay, that's actually leads perfectly because we have to talk about what just happened in the preseason.
Sure.
Because the preseason was just – I honestly – I'm not saying that I haven't witnessed a Steelers preseason like this yet, because I've watched the Steelers. I'm 36 years old. I've watched the Steelers for 3 decades now. I just can't remember a preseason going this well. Like, especially in all three phases, on offense, on defense, on special teams. I mean, Kenny was literally perfect. I mean, unless you want to nitpick and say, well, he didn't complete every single pass, but he had a perfect passer rating. The offense scored on the first team offense scored on every single drive. The defense was amazing. I can't think of one. Maybe you can give me a different perspective, but I can't think of a better preseason for this team.
So this is what we're addressing, right? The over-under is 8.5, and we're correlating it to what the preseason brought, which, yes, it's a perfect record, but the more important thing about what the Steelers did this preseason is the means by which the first team produced, and that's offense and defense. When you look at that first team offense, Kenny Pickett, 5 touchdown drives in 5 tries. Jaylen Warren looked really explosive. There was a plan for Naji Harris to get rest. George Pickens made a couple of great plays. The touchdown to Pat Freiermuth, to me, is the highlight of the preseason. And not from the standpoint of it was just a touchdown play.
Right.
That play really displayed the growth that Kenny Pickett has gone through. And this is coming back from Latrobe. And if you really want to loop this back towards the back half of last season, you also can do that. That period in Latrobe, where Kenny Pickett just looked confident, he looked cool out there, he looked like he was ready for this kind of moment, he looked like he came in ready for year 2. And not having Mitch Trubisky or Mason Rudolph breathing down his neck per se helps that a lot. But watch that throw to Pat Freiermuth and the window it went through and the timing that it took. That, to me, is the play of the preseason, and it brings everything together beautifully.
I'm looking a little deeper than that, and again, I'm doing what I said earlier. I just put a film room type piece on the site yesterday. The little things that Kenny did, and I compared it to a couple of different plays from some of the weaknesses, the flaws that he had last year. The little things that he did, his footwork in the pocket, his willingness to stay in the pocket, to not abandon and leave the pocket so early, because when you're a mobile quarterback and you're at your best on the move, it's easy for a young quarterback to want to get to his comfort level really quickly. But unfortunately, when that happens, you miss certain windows, you miss certain receivers that get open. I pointed to a play against the Raiders last year where Kenny left way too early, and if he would have stayed in for like literally a second more, which is an eternity in the NFL, Deontay Johnson was running wide open across the middle of the field, literally nobody around him. But it's those little things, and watching him intentionally try to stay in the pocket, to his footwork to manipulate defenders, to stay outside of the throwing lane that he already knew he was going to go to. All those little things, he made it look so easy. And I think that, to me, is one of the biggest reasons why I think Kenny Pickett is on like, he will be kind of I don't want to say breakout, because that almost puts like unfair expectations on him, but to take a significant leap forward, I think he can, because of all those little things.
I'm going to address that over-under, because I do think the Steelers go over. And here's the most basic way that I can put it before I address this comment from Ben about Naji Harris. The Steelers won 9 football games last year with Kenny Pickett playing half of the season, 3/4 of the season, and with Kenny taking time to figure it out in the process. And there's a first half Kenny Pickett, and there's a second half Kenny Pickett. There's a first half Naji Harris leading into Naji, and there's a second half Naji Harris. There's no secret why they finished with the record they did in the second half of the season compared to the first half. It's Kenny Pickett's growth. It was the growth of that offense. And the defense held its own. The defense did its thing. And that's going to lead me to what Ben said about Naji Harris. Have I noticed a change in his demeanor? He seems to be a bit down in energy, and you can see it in his face. Here's the thing about Naji Harris. And whether he, quote unquote, earned this or it was warranted or whatever it may have been, the Steelers felt that this had to be a plan that had to be executed for Naji going into year 3. And that is a lighter workload in the preseason. This is something new for Naji Harris. This is a 2-time 1,000-yard rusher. This is a guy who's going to be maybe the focal point, not just a focal point, the focal point of this offense, because Matt Canada wants to run the football. So for Naji Harris, who battled that foot injury all last preseason and throughout the first half, and played with a steel plate in his shoe and all that fun nonsense, I think the best course of action was to do something like this for Naji Harris. And what it did was it opened up opportunities for Jaylen Warren to essentially feature himself. And now I think Anthony McFarland is not only better than he's ever been, I think he's positioned himself to make this 53-man roster.
Yeah. I think, I don't know if like when you're referring to Naji's demeanor, if that means like, my immediate reaction to that is like the way he's running, because I also notice just watching on film, he's not running as violently as he did, especially down the stretch last year, like the way he ran against Atlanta or Carolina, Baltimore, Vegas, those games last year. And I think that one of the reasons why you might not see him running the same way is because, well, it's the preseason. There's no, I mean, when we're talking about limited mileage on running backs, there's no reason for Naji to be running, completely at 100% every single snap that he's out there. Like you said, the main goal is Naji being healthy, because this running back room, regardless of where we think Jaylen Warren can go, or is Anthony McFarland about to establish himself as a legitimate running back to be relied on whenever somebody needs a spell, this running back room is way better with Naji Harris there, and they need Naji to be healthy, because Naji at his best is when he's healthy and in games that matter. And as good as this preseason looked, these games ultimately don't matter because they don't count. The next time they take the field, that game matters. You need Naji to be running like that there, and he's healthy to do it now.
I want to address the Kevin Dotson trade. For those that missed it, Monday evening, the Steelers traded Kevin Dotson to the Los Angeles Rams, and included in that was a pick swap. The Steelers are receiving the Rams' 2024 fourth rounder and their 2025 fifth rounder. And the Steelers are also including the 2024 fifth rounder and the 2025 sixth rounder. So what they're doing is they're moving up one round in each of those drafts, essentially in order to get rid of Kevin Dotson. I mean, that's now a 53-man spot, which the cuts are coming at 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow afternoon. Mm-hmm. And here's a question from Jim. Does Khan make any other moves? It was about $2.75 million saved with the Kevin Dotson trade. So, Chris, the Steelers can navigate now with this freed up cap space. And I think that's something to make a point of here is the Steelers can also look at who else is getting cut around the NFL and start to use some of that money to bring in a player or sign someone to the practice squad. It's a little more maneuverability than what they had, obviously. And there's obviously money to move around. But what do you make of this?
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway that I have from something like this is it gives the Steelers flexibility. Like even that $2.75 million, it gives them added flexibility to do anything, whether it's something before week one, whether it's something to do mid-season if they want to make a trade at the trade deadline, which that's not a typical NFL season type thing. But I mean, we saw Khan kind of do the opposite. Dude, thank you, AJ Dub. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, $2 here from AJ. And
that's awesome.
I want to bring up the Spencer Anderson quote. That came from the locker room this morning, but believe it or not, after we log out today, I will be driving back to the South Side to see if anybody else feels like speaking this afternoon. But I spoke to Spencer Anderson this morning, and when it comes to that 53-man cut line, this is a 7th-round draft pick. They don't have much invested in the kid. However, I'm feeling like he's played his way onto the 53, and a lot of that has to do with the Dotson trade. And that combines it with the Kendrick Green, the Kendrick Green, like whatever you want to call it, the fiasco, I guess right now, like the fullback experiment combined with the bad center play in the preseason. Like it feels like it's done for Kendrick Green. And Spencer Anderson can play center. Nate Herbig can play center. And again, I kind of took Spencer Anderson's temperature this morning about how do you feel? What are you doing? Do you feel like you did enough in the preseason? And, he talked about the generic, control what I can control type of thing. But also there was something involved in that just when it comes to the tape that he put forward. He acknowledged not every play is going to be perfect, but the fact that he's able to play across all 5 positions on the offensive line and he specializes as the interior, to me, that gives him a leg up.
Yeah. Bob makes a really good point here about cornerback, because I think if you were to look at the rest of the if you were to look at the roster right now, take a snapshot and based off of what you saw in the preseason, Bob says here 3 million might snare us a 4th-round cornerback, or fourth cornerback that works better than Pierre. I mean, that's probably a good position to try to look at upgrading. Not necessarily because you don't believe in Patrick Peterson or Joey Porter Jr. or Chandon Sullivan or Elijah Riley or any of those guys. It's just, or Levi Wallace. It's just you want to have as much depth there as you possibly can. The Steelers had Ahkello Witherspoon go down early last year. And regardless of what anybody wants to say about Witherspoon last year, the year before, he had a lot of good moments. And he was just gone pretty much all year. And you don't want to get into another situation like that where if one of those guys, if Levi Wallace goes down with an injury, all of a sudden that room gets a lot more thin, like way too thin. So it wouldn't surprise me to see the Steelers go after a cornerback, in some form or fashion, whether it's signing a guy who was waived, or shoot, man, William Jackson III, is he still around? Is he healthy? I mean,
he's not in Pittsburgh right now. I can tell you that.
But I mean, he would be a guy who's at least been in the room long enough, who kind of has familiarity with the system because he was in all of those meetings last year. So I'm not saying that's who they should go get. I'm just saying, like, you got to think about those type of options.
I'm going to give a slight spoiler to the story I wrote today about the projection that I make of the 53-man roster. When it comes to cornerback, I have Elijah Riley in and James Pierre out. I think that Elijah Riley provides a little more value to the Steelers right now. I think he played more consistently, or on a consistent level rather than somebody like a James Pierre did throughout camp, and that's practice and games. I think Riley has good versatility as a safety, whereas Pierre, you could play as a slot corner or outside. But I think the Steelers are pretty short up outside right now between Patrick Peterson, Joey Porter Jr., and Levi Wallace. Aquatic Life here. He's not convinced by Anthony McFarland. How long has he been on the roster? Passed it by Naji, passed it by Jalen. No spot on special teams, I believe. Well, so Anthony McFarland has been testing out as a kick returner. And between himself, Gunnar Olszewski, and Calvin Austin, those are going to be your 3 return specialists, to my knowledge, on the 53. And the key here that Aquatic Life mentions is he has to be significant in the run game for once, and he says to cut him. Here's why I say to keep him, okay? Not just because of the special teams versatility. I think there's something to be said about having depth at running back in addition to what Naji Harris can provide. And with that, Jaylen Warren has proved himself as a runner, as a powerful, shifty at times runner. I think Anthony McFarland and what they showed in some instances in training camp, he can show a different wrinkle in this offense where you could put Naji and McFarland on the field together. You could put Jaylen Warren and Anthony McFarland on the field together. McFarland profiles better as a pass-catching running back than Jaylen Warren does. In some cases, he's as good of a pass catcher as Naji Harris is. Not saying he's better. He can be as good. So I think McFarland sticks around. He's on my 53-man. I think he had a really impressive training camp that kept him on the 53. And I think the Steelers will be more than content with keeping 3 running backs on this roster.
Well, I really don't think they're going to have anything less than 3 running backs because if Naji or Jalen goes down, you're kind of screwed, honestly.
Right, unless you're playing Connor Hayward at tailback.
But even then, like, Connor Hayward's not he can take a handoff from the backfield for sure. He did that in the preseason, but he's not a tailback. He's not going to be able to do the same things that Naji or Jalen or McFarland can do. McFarland, I honestly look at one of the 2 reasons why I like McFarland for the roster is, number one, he's the best back that they have that's not named Naji Harris or Jaylen Warren. And second, look at what he did in a pinch in the Indianapolis game last year. Jalen missed the game completely. He was ruled out before the game started, and then Naji gets hurt in the middle of the game. And so then it's up to Benny Snell Jr. and Anthony McFarland to handle the running. And both of them did it. Benny had a phenomenal game running the ball, but McFarland had some really good moments in there too. And so you have a guy who knows the offense, who's familiar with with the offensive line, with Kenny, with Matt Canada's schemes and everything. And he's also on the rise. Like, to me, that's a no-brainer.
With about 5 minutes left on the inaugural episode here of the Southside Beat, Chris. Brian says he's really liking a Landon Roberts, and that inside linebacker may now be a team strength. I don't know about a strength, but I tell you what, I feel good about the room.
They haven't had a guy who runs downhill like that since I don't want to say Ryan Shazier because I don't want to put Landon Roberts in the same category as Shazier because that's really not fair. But I would say Vince Williams. I mean, but still, like he runs downhill. He's so explosive when he's running downhill, and like I already knew just by watching the tape and everything that he was a guy who was going to be like he's a heat-seeking missile. Like that's just the best way to describe it. He's going to miss every now and then. James Lawson calling me out. Yeah, don't say Shazier. I don't want to put Landon Roberts in that same category because I'm not trying to say that. Believe me, Ryan Shazier is. Yeah,
he's his own guy. He's 1-1.
Yes,
he's 1-1.
He really is. But yeah, Leroy right there. I like the Vince Williams comparison. Like that to me is kind of what a Landon. And honestly, if a Landon Roberts is Vince Williams, what Vince Williams was for those defenses, slam dunk.
I'll say this too. Easy. What makes it even more of a feel-good thing is that Quan Alexander came in and didn't miss a step.
Yeah, that was a really, really good find. That really makes that room a lot more intriguing, a lot deeper, because you kind of know what you're getting with Cole Holcomb. You kind of already knew what you were getting with Landon Roberts, even though he's looked better than expected. And obviously, you know, with Mark Robinson that he's raw, he still has a lot of room to grow. But Quan Alexander coming in and looking like that guy, that like the best version of himself. Yes, and James is right. Roberts is way better than Bush and Jacks.
Miles Jack
retired, man. He had a
rocky last couple of years in general. And you know what?
He was playing with a torn groin last year, man.
It's tough. I mean, it's very tough to do what he had to do last year, and he still produced a decent enough season to at least get a look in training camp. But as of now, obviously he is retired, and we're going to end our public comments here with not just Robert talking about the two backfield. In the day, I think they could go into some 21 personnel, two running backs, one tight end, but I think you're going to see a lot more 12, as in one running back, two tight ends, and that's going to mix and match. And obviously, as practices go, as the preseason goes leading up to week 1, we're going to talk more about personnel groupings and how the Steelers can use Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth and Zach Gentry and Connor Hayward and all these real good pieces that are now around Kenny Pickett. Bob here to end the show. Good start, fellas. Let's do this 5 days a week, maybe. We're going to do this 5 days a week, definitely.
Yeah, there's no maybe. We are here every single day, Monday through Friday, 3:00 Eastern, an hour before the Ramon Foster show starts. I think the only days we might not be here is like the same type of thing with Ramon, like on holidays and stuff like that. But other than that, we're here every day. Monday through Friday.
Thursday game days should be good. Fridays are going to be a little tricky with me because I'll still be traveling for Pitt. But one way or another, we'll find a way to do the show. And we'll obviously keep updated on DKPittsburghSports.com on the Steelers feed. All of you have been rocking the Steelers feed. It's been a lot of fun to be interacting in there and posting in there and having fun in there. This is going to be a good thing. I'm excited for it. I know Chris is excited for it.
Heck yeah.
I know DK is definitely excited for it. So you got Ramon Foster coming in about 40 minutes or so. So, go to the restroom, grab a food, grab a drink, hang out.
AJ's right.
I'm going to run back to the south side and see what's going on in the locker room after practice. And Chris, we'll do this again Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern right here.
All right. See you guys later.
Talk soon.